It's finally summer here in Wisconsin, 55 degrees. Okay, the roof is open, and there's still some small overbearing worry that we may actually have to do the social distancing for like another couple, 2-3 months. But that does mean that you can grind in Warzone to get your first dub, so you can brag about it for weeks, which, by the way, got a duo 16-kill dub in Warzone against quads, okay? Also had a 3-man team, 24 kills, no big deal. It was a pretty big deal, actually. And just like all things, when we're bored, we start to look at things that we traditionally wouldn't. Like, just how affordable are plane tickets to Canada right now? I mean, why not? Why wouldn't you check? How much is a 50-pound bag of Snickers? And is it time to finally buy a muscle car? The world is changing, and interest in domestics, particularly Corvettes, have skyrocketed in terms of interest and ownership. Except, instead of people with New Balances and tucked-in t-shirts with jean shorts owning these things, we've got Yeezy wearing, Thrasher shirt owning, weave sticker slapping car enthusiasts picking up these angels, all right? I'm Alex @FI on Instagram, and today we're gonna be talking about the car that has grown in popularity on TikTok, okay? The car that has been the true underdog in the younger enthusiast community, a platform which, by and large, is a banging car to own, and looking at miles per gallon is probably one of the best cars that you can buy in the history of the world, and is probably better in terms of performance than anything else out there for like under $20,000. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're gonna be talking about you wanting to own a 1997 or newer Chevrolet Corvette. And in case you're wondering why the wheels aren't behind me, well, spoiler alert. I don't even need to explain it. You probably already know. But hey, if this is your first time jumping into one of these videos, hello. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you haven't yet, be sure to check us out over at fitmentindustries.com if you're looking for aftermarket wheels, tires, or suspension. And we promise that if you do subscribe, you won't be disappointed. And just so that you do know, we also have a giveaway with Airlift Performance going on right now. You pick up one of these t-shirts, a sweatshirt, or a windbreaker. Every $5 gets you automatic entry to win a 3P Performance Kit. My brain's moving. My hands are shaking. I just had coffee. I'd show you my cup. It's got cats on it. Anyway, the Corvette has a massive history behind it, starting back in 1951 with Harley Earl and his eventual love affair with a Jaguar, not Jaguar, that's kind of weird, but the XK120, which sparked his desire to create a dream car for GM at the same time, but just a wee bit more affordable and reliable. The Chevrolet Corvette would initially be birthed after an agile ship known as the EX122, okay? Production begins and the Corvette gains the attention of automotive enthusiasts year over year, and pretty much without truly acknowledging it, Chevy began creating a sports car. Years would pass and Chevy would expand upon what made a Corvette a Corvette. Okay, it had a big old V8 up to a 283 cubic inches in the 57. They updated the cooling and they had a sharper body style. Chevy would jump into the game even further when they came out with the second generation Corvette that took everything that made the European cars of that time desirable in the United States and added everything that made a Corvette such a banger of a car in the States. And the reason the C2 Corvette is such a desired car is because it's probably like the most beautiful car ever made. Split window, Z06 Special Edition, or Grand Sport, it doesn't matter. They're all beautiful. But let's fast forward a few decades over to the C5 Corvette. Now, if you want to talk about the C2 to the C4, we can do that in another episode because this is a big old car, all right?
It's the next vet.
Corvette's got more vacuum lines over the years, and that's pretty much the spark notes for you. But anyway, they started racing more competitively, and when they jumped into the C5, they were really nothing to fudge with. And in 1997, this beautiful green earth got introduced to the C5 platform. And people were watching Titanic for like the 7th time in theaters at the same time. The C5 Corvette was born. It was just a good time back then. Featuring a revised motor placement, which was a new aluminum block, AKA the godsend motor of the LS1, the Corvette list of weaknesses started to not look so plentiful, which a lot of people criticized earlier generations of Corvettes having. Dave Hill, the chief engineer for the C5, spent quite a few couple minutes making the con list as short as possible because of how much flack the previous generation Corvettes were getting. Mostly because it was still Chevy, you know, still GM. They had some interior plastic bits that just kind of started randomly shaking loose, vacuum lines all over the place. I mean, typical Corvette things. Now, the C5 Corvette became a staple for the domestic sports car world and was revolutionary for the car at the price at the time. Drive-by-wire throttle, variable effects steering, and even the new LS1 and eventual LS6 bump up in the Z06 kicked out the numbers that made these even supercars at the same time a little bit nervous. Of course, just like all things GM, the car was massively produced and had multiple different trims like the Z06, the ZR1, the Z16, which is a weird one, and a bunch other ones. And now, even with the somewhat dated styling, the car was and still is considered likely one of the best American sports cars out there that does a pretty decent job at almost everything without being killer at one single point. You know, it's like, it's kind of good at all of them, but not really fantastic in one. All right, it has good handling, good speed, a reliable motor, and a decent transmission to boot, which makes it a pretty fun car to swing around the hillsides. Now, you still have to get over the fact that the interior kind of feels like your grandmother's house back in 1947. But besides that, it's a pretty decent car, and it did get better. The C6 Z06 took everything that was great about the C5 and just locked it down. If you had to choose between the two, the C6 is comparably better and noticeably so if you drove the two side by side. Now, the C6 would come in 2005 and stay for 8 years of plenty different design cues and changes. They pretty much just wanted to keep it looking sharp, and it still looks sharp even to this day. Now, fun fact, it was the first Vette with conventional headlights since 1962, so you can use that on a Friday night drinking session. People loved the C6. Critics loved the C6. Your dad loved the C6. Everyone loved the C6. It was one of the few times where people would collectively come together and agree that, damn, that was a good Chevy, all right? But we're not here to talk about just the history of these cars. If you want that, go to your local Burger King Classic Car Show, which, by the way, those are very fun. I feel like they only happen around here, but I always enjoyed it because people got really confused about lowered cars because most of them were old. Now, we're here to talk about you wanting to own one of these bald eagle-loving, LS-happy, tire-smoking, Frant hot dog, Busch Light drinking souvenirs. So you want a C5 or C6 Chevy Corvette. Well, set down your Saturday for the boys flag and pick up your favorite meme pic from Facebook, and let's actually talk about what it's like to own one of these LS cars. All right, picking up a Corvette for pretty much any reason, you'll need to understand the following rules. They're like the unofficial guidelines of owning a Corvette. Okay, number one, LS swaps now must become a standard part of your automotive joke dictionary because when you get one, you just feel obligated to do that. Number two, Busch Light is your new favorite beer. No questions, don't even think about it. Bonus points, cams, or just get out. All right, I mean, really. And then you're probably gonna turn into a troll machine in some way, shape, or form. I don't get it, I don't know why, it's just a thing. In all honesty, the C5 and C6 Corvettes are fantastic picks. They feature an engine platform that can receive tons of aftermarket potential. They survive just about everything, and they aren't that expensive to own from a reliability perspective. Because they're massively produced, they're all over the place. They're in junkyards, they're in the southern states, they're in the northern states, they're everywhere. The insurance, it's gonna cuck you, but I mean, for the most part, it's okay. But the world isn't just picking these cars up anymore because they scream poor healthcare out of their exhaust. Nowadays, the younglings are snagging up these things too. It's very weird. It makes me uncomfortable a little bit. But because instead of big tires and cray wheels, which is mostly what you'd see on Corvettes, they're now doing like JDM styling on C5 Corvettes. They're pairing up wheels like work wheels and stretchy boy tires with BC coilovers. Take a look out there in the gallery, and the C5 Corvette has somewhat become the domestic version of like a Volkswagen Golf. Capable of doing really a little bit of everything minus the winter driving, the C5 and C6 Corvette are very good cars to do whatever you want to them. The C6, not so much. That's still pretty much predominantly a performance-oriented build platform. Now, most of the newer C6 builds are going more towards your coilover setup like BC coils, Velgen wheels, or Forge Star F14s and Nitto tires. Like, buy a Corvette, you get Nitto tires. There's no question about it, you just do it. And if you're looking to own either generation, most Corvettes will be pretty well taken care of because they were owned by a middle-aged dude with tucked-in t-shirts. I don't know what you want me to tell you. It's like they go to Home Depot on Saturdays, they go to church on Sundays, and they take their Corvette there. Good things to keep an eye on with C5s, though, are the front lip pieces, ensuring the key disengage recall was done, and keeping an eye on those plastic interior bits because This is America, bud, and the plastics on the inside are still a little bit rough. You gotta be okay with that. I would argue the C6 got a little bit better, but you're not really buying it for the interior, you're buying it for everything else. C6s are a little different because they utilized a drivable chassis with a non-structured SMC. These C6s had its components mounted. It was via like an epoxy type bonding material, which meant damage usually resulted in a repair of the whole panel. Now, you'll want to keep an eye out for mismatched panels on C6s and things like that, because if they got in an accident, they had to do that. Air dams in this generation get all sorts of messed up or beaten up because people underestimate how low these cars truly are from stock. Now, the LS2 or LS3 power plants are pretty impressive for throwing power and money at, and will have you end up with lots of smiles on your face unless you wrap it around a tree. But for a younger enthusiast or someone that hasn't owned a car over 400 horsepower before, you're probably going to want to you're probably gonna have either a near-death experience, or you'll crash it, or you just never will drive it to like its full potential. I encourage you guys, if you do pick up anything over 400 horse, be safe. Corvettes, they'll knock you on your butt. The C5 Corvette was the Corvette that put Chevy back into the massive limelight with a car that rivaled tons of European counterparts and had plenty of automotive enthusiasts holding their breath at the Nürburgring and at the local drag day. The C6 was the literal car version of saying, if the shit ain't broke, don't fix it, okay? Because you can't, it was just a refined C5. But if we could take the car further, let's do it. Because the C6 is that C5 platform on steroids and looks a hell of a lot better in most people's eyes. It ain't perfect because it's still, you know, it's got some things to work on. So what do you think about the Chevy Corvette? Let us know below. And if you're looking for aftermarket wheels, tires, or suspension for your newly acquired Corvette or otherwise, be sure to check us out over at fitmentindustries.com. Now, there's a lot to go into the C5 and C6 Corvette, but the biggest thing to remember, you're now required to drink Busch Light. No questions asked. We hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm Alex from Fitment Industries. We will see you later. Peace.